So how formation of electrochemical cells appears? The electrochemical cells, the formation, plays a very major important role in the corrosion, in the wet corrosion. So any metal undergoes corrosion only by forming this type of cell. What is an electrochemical cell? Electrochemical cell forms by the combination of anode and cathode electrodes. Anode and cathode electrodes. So here also the theory explains us only with the single metal how electrochemical cell forms with the two different parts, anode and cathode compartment, and how the cell is formed. By forming a cell, how the corrosion appears. So when you look at here, I have placed a piece of sample of iron. This is electrochemical reactions in the metal. So according to electrochemical theory, when a metal such as iron is exposed to corrosive environment, following changes occur. A large number of tiny galvanic cells with anodic and cathodic regions are formed as shown in figure. So this is a figure what I am showing you. It is a tiny piece of iron metal. So this iron metal, this is the iron metal. This iron metal, rod iron metal piece, which contains, here you can see there is a exposed area. This is an exposed area, acts as an anode, and the half acts as a cathode, which is unexposed. There are two parts. One surface acts as anode, half part acts as anode, and half part acts as a cathode. Imagine there is a two metal piece. When half part acts as an anode, another half part acts as a cathode. Always remember that the portion or the metal which acts as an anode, that will be affected by the corrosion, whereas the cathode portion or cathode part is not affected by the corrosion. Whatever may be the corrosion of whatever may be the metal undergoes corrosion only in the anodic surface or anodic region or anode part of the metal or anode metal rod, which is in content. So this anode portion or anode metal surface only affects by the corrosion, and this part you can see destruction in the surface. So what type of reaction takes place here in the anode? Usually anode means it undergoes oxidation. What is oxidation? Fe, because we have taken iron as an example. So iron undergoes oxidation to give Fe2 plus 2E, Fe2 plus 2E. Remember this equation throughout this chapter, because throughout the chapter only this equation and iron we are taking an example. Whenever whatever may be the cause or differences they'll ask, you have to write this reaction. This reaction carries marks, 2 marks it carries. So you have to write. Without the reaction, there won't be any marks. So anode, as soon as anode comes to your mind, hence we have taken iron as an example. It undergoes oxidation to give Fe, gives to Fe2 plus 2 electrons. How many electrons it releases? 2 electrons. What is the reaction called as? We call it as anodic reaction or oxidation reaction. When it comes to the cathode, here you can see this is the cathode portion. In this cathode portion, here the moisture is present, water, and dissolved oxygen is present. This water and dissolved oxygen, and it when it liberates OH minus ions, this OH minus ion react with this Fe2 plus, this OH minus ion react with this Fe2 plus ion under three different conditions. In a cathode reaction, in the cathode region, how three different conditions, what are the different conditions to liberate this OH minus ions in the cathode surface? We'll see what are those reactions. In these reactions, next slide. In this reaction, the first condition, liberation of hydrogen in the absence of oxygen. The first condition is liberation of hydrogen in the absence of oxygen. Second condition is absorption of oxygen in the presence of oxygen. Liberation of hydrogen in the absence of oxygen, first condition. And the second condition is absorption of oxygen in the presence of oxygen. Here in the absence of oxygen, here it is in the presence of oxygen. So next, in acidic medium, the reaction under this liberation of hydrogen, in an acidic medium, the reaction is what? The reaction carries is H plus 2 electrons to give hydrogen ions. Here you can see this is the hydrogen ion. This hydrogen liberates in the hydrogen. Hydrogen liberation takes place in this reaction. Where it has gone. Hydrogen liberation takes place. This hydrogen liberation, this is the first condition where we require OH minus ions. In the moisture, whatever the hydrogen liberates or electrons liberates in with H plus ion reacts, these electrons react with the moisture. These electrons react with the moisture, that is water, to give OH minus ions. To give what? To give OH minus ion. So from the first condition is what? Liberation of hydrogen. Through the liberation of hydrogen, whatever the electrons liberated from the first reaction, these electrons react with the water to give OH minus ions, to give OH minus ion. From here also you got a OH. Second condition is what? Second condition is absorption of oxygen. Absorption of oxygen. So this absorption of oxygen, how it takes place? Say H plus ions are present, dissolved oxygen is present in the medium, and electrons are present. When all these are reacting together, it liberates water, it liberates moisture. From this reaction, whatever the electrons are, dissolved oxygen is present, it reacts with the water, it reacts with two molecules or excess of water to give excess of OH minus ion. Compared to the first, the second condition gives more number of hydrogen. Hence, in the cathode, always absorption of oxygen, that is in the presence of oxygen, liberation of OH minus ions are more in the absorption of oxygen in the cathode surface. So what is the anodic reaction? Anode reaction, we will get only Fe2 plus ion. In the cathode reaction, there are two conditions. First condition is liberation of hydrogen. Second condition is absorption of oxygen. Liberation of hydrogen and absorption of oxygen, when you take, in the absorption of oxygen, it liberates more number of hydroxyl ions, that is OH minus ions, in the cathode region or cathode portion. So when these two are combined means, here you can see Fe ions, Fe plus ions from the first, and when it reacts with the half molecule of oxygen and water, it gives ferrous hydroxide, that is FeOH twice. This FeOH twice is a unstable product. This FeOH plus is unstable product. From where we get this hydroxyl and water and oxygen? From in the presence of oxygen and moisture. So this unstable ferrous hydroxide, that is FeOH twice, which is unstable, further react with oxygen and water, further react with oxygen and dissolved oxygen and water, that is moisture, to give Fe2O3, 3H2O, which is called as hydrated ferric oxide. What is called as hydrated ferric oxide? Usually the rust, we call this as a rust. What is the rust product? Rust product is nothing but hydrated ferric oxide. Remember this. Here it is ferrous. The oxidation state of ferrous ion is Fe2 plus here, and here the oxidation state of iron ion in ferric oxide is Fe3 plus. So considering the oxidation state, it oxidizes very fast in the presence of oxygen and moisture to give the hydrated products of metal oxide. In general, if you take any metal, here we have taken example of iron, hence the rust is forming hydrated ferric oxide. If you take copper as an example, anode reaction forms by copper, that is Cu gives Cu2 plus 2 electrons, only change in the first reaction, and the metal is what we have taken is copper. What is the rust forms in case of copper is hydrated cupric oxide. Hydrated cupric oxide. This is how this theory, electrochemical theory, explains us how the hydrated metal oxides are formed in the presence of oxygen and in the absence of oxygen to give rust. And if different conditions are there, here also you can see in the presence of limited supply of oxygen, if you control the oxygen supply instead of giving more oxygen, if you limit the supply, as you limit the supply of oxygen, a rust will form, but the color of the rust changes. It forms yellow rust. Here the rust color is red color layer, because here you are giving, there is no limitation for the oxygen. Directly it is absorbed, whatever the oxygen absorbed in the water, that reacting directly with the ferrous hydroxide. So the color of ferric hydroxide is here is red, but here it is yellow because we are supplying with a, we limited the supply of oxygen. So this black rust is again, it depends on how much oxygen we are supplied. But here it is the black residue, depends upon the supply of oxygen. The color of rust can be changes. So this is how electrochemical theory explains. Very, very important for the exam. Exam is how they will ask what is corrosion or give the definition of corrosion, and give how electrochemical, explain the process of electrochemical theory of corrosion in the wet environment, or explain the wet corrosion by electrochemical theory. This is how they will ask in the exam. It will be asked for 6 and 8 marks definitely.